this is the ideal version of what the Lions can look like. You've got all these playmakers who can get into space. David Montgomery played Seattle. He might as well do his best beast mode impression. Just shook off Devin Witherspoon like a preschooler. Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman. We've got another loaded show for y'all today. Another Monday night doubleheader, an incredibly entertaining win for the Detroit Lions over the Seattle Seahawks at Ford Field, and a win for the Tennessee Titans over the Miami Dolphins, much less on the entertaining side of things. We will get to both of those games. Also taking a deep dive into what's going on with the Chicago Bears. Very interesting times as they continue to develop Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick. Going to take a close look at what's been good, what's been bad for them through the first 4 games of their season. Of course, we are going to have power rankings. But first, before we dive into Monday Night Football, before we do the rest of that, as always, on Mondays, we sit down with our guy, NFL on Fox insider Jay Glazer, to talk all things updates coming out of the weekend. Plenty of pertinent stuff to get to, and maybe a little update on our guy, Rob Gronkowski, as well. Check out our conversation with Jay next.
All right, Jay, as always, man, thanks for stopping by to catch up on some of the big storylines, some of the big takeaways coming out of the weekend. I wanted to start with this, which Week 5 always feels a little bit early for a bye week, but that's where the Philadelphia Eagles are, and they're going into it off of a pretty embarrassing loss down in Tampa. I'm not trying to start anything, but coming off a loss like that, I mean, what are the vibes like in Philly? Should we be on the lookout for it?
Sounds like you're trying to start something.
Maybe slightly. Just like, I mean, with what we've seen, the ups and downs from this team in the first month of the season, I can't imagine this is going to be a comfortable week for the Eagles. I mean, what are you hearing coming out of Philadelphia?
It shouldn't be a comfortable week. It should be a very uncomfortable week. There's a lot of problems there all across the board. The execution was really bad. And where do you want to start? I mean, obviously it starts with the offense. But look, when you don't have Lane Johnson, you don't have your 2 best weapons at receivers, you can say, okay, well, it's a little bit difficult over on that side of the ball. But Jalen Hurts just isn't seeing things the way they need him to see it. But defensively, there's really not a lot of excuses. They bring in Vic Fangio, supposed to be the biggest genius in the league when it comes to defense. And they are just, they just got gashed all over the place yesterday. And poor execution, bad tackling. And, Vic is the type of guy, he's a miserable dude. But you deal with it because, he's such a curmudgeon, but you deal with it because he's such a good defensive coach. But man, the two don't go along. If your defense isn't playing great, plus it's doom and gloom in there all the time, that doesn't work for you. So it's about culture, right? And it's not, over on the defensive side of the ball, it's got to be miserable right now. Offensive side of the ball, at least they could say, okay, we're going to get our guys back. But with that said, the quarterback it's like he's not seeing things, his progressions, the way they needed to see. I don't put this all on Nick Sirianni. He's had some questionable calls, obviously, with kicking field goals and things like that. And but there's they're right now. I think they have somewhat of an identity crisis. Yeah,
which I don't necessarily put it all on Nick Sirianni either. No. But you mentioned culture, identity. Those are things that ultimately can get tied back to a head coach pretty quickly, knowing that this guy was already.
It is, but like defensively, that's Vic's. Like, trust me, yeah, it's a team thing. But Vic makes it, his defense against the world, right? Offensively, yeah, I don't think obviously things are gelling over there with Kellen Moore and the quarterback, and the quarterback also is just. I'm going to put a lot of this on Jalen.
I mean, I think that's completely fair. I think we're up to 27 turnovers since the start of the 2023 season. I said on yesterday's show, I think I don't want to use the word pass, but I think it's understandable with what the Eagles didn't have on offense that they might struggle a little bit, but you got a $50+ million quarterback. At the very least, you can expect a little bit better ball security.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's just not, Jalen, I think the team has to go as Jalen goes. Jalen's just not going.
I think I figured we were headed for some hardship with the Eagles at some point during the season, but week 5, awfully early in the year.
Their personnel is too good to, to not be playing like this. But again, I there's never excuse in football, but to have your 2 best receivers and your right tackle is the best right tackle in football, and probably second best overall tackle in football. Maybe the first, him and Trent Williams are the 2 best in the league. That you can't minimize that at all. And especially also, they had to rotate so many guys. It's 107 degrees down there in Tampa. And you got to rotate so many guys through, and you don't have the depth that you want to have. That's difficult as well. But yeah, I think that I don't know if the answer does have to kind of start with Jalen.
I mean, maybe, hopefully for the Eagles, the answer is as easy as getting those guys healthy during the week off. But if it's more than that, then I think these conversations are only going to get more uncomfortable as the season goes along.
But even so, if they get their receivers back, and obviously Lane will get back, they get the receivers back, then you have to say, all right, as they're trying to mesh on offense, that defense got to carry them. The defense is really good personnel. It's got to carry them, and they're not. That's going to be on Vic Fangio.
Like we said, probably an uncomfortable week in Philadelphia. I wanted to ask you about a report from Sunday about Shane Waldron and the Chicago Bears. You were talking about this on Sunday Sunday morning. I'm sorry?
What I said?
Yes. Yeah. Just about, the Bears wanting Shane Waldron to be a little bit more aggressive, coach his players harder. Caleb Williams, Cole Kmet, some other guys on the Bears roster. Talk to him about this. Can you?
Mercedes Lewis, who, by the way, played his 272nd game this weekend, which makes him 101. That's the longest tenured tight end. No tight end has ever played more games ever. And look, I've known Mercedes for, I think I started training him at 17 years ago, something along those lines. And one of the reasons the Bears brought him in there is to have an extra coach in there. And that's what he did this past week. He, Cole Kmet, Caleb Williams went and met with Shane Waldron. They're like, look, same Pop Warner. You got to coach us all aggressively. We've got like and they did it in a way. He didn't do it in a way where they were attacking him. They did it in a way of like, we've got to come together better. We've got to kind of do this. This has to be a collaboration together. But get after, like Caleb, get after me. We're not doing things. Correct us. Get after us. Let's do certain things in the running game. Let's do certain things to help bail Caleb out. But you've got to start getting after us a little bit more and be more aggressive with all of us, and we'll respond.
That's really interesting to hear because, I mean, you think about like a number 1 overall pick, all the expectations that are on Caleb, maybe to some degree that honeymoon period has to end where it's like, hey, we're in this now, man. We can't be thinking about it in terms of me being this savior draft pick. We're here to get better at actually playing football.
Yeah, but also look at, it really, we said it, Howie Long said it yesterday on our show, it's a huge difference of who you're placed with for your coordinator. You have Cliff Kingsbury, who's over there with Jaden Daniels, and he's developing, right? And they're using his strengths. Same thing here with Caleb. Shane's got to develop him and use his strengths. But it's overall, when you look at that offensive line, they look like they're bad offensive line. They got good personnel on their offensive line, but they look like they're all playing on different teams. They've got to mesh together. So, no, I think it was a veteran move by Mercedes. That's what you want from a guy like that. And Mercedes, too, like that's another tackle out there. Their running game should be much better. Mercedes, if he decided he's in year 19 right now, if he decided, I'm going to switch over to tackle, he could probably play another 5 years.
It's a lucrative position to get 5 more years out of your career if you want to give it a try, Mercedes. Let's keep it in the NFC North. I mean, at this point, it goes without saying, Sam Darnold off to an absolutely incredible start. I don't think even the biggest Vikings backers saw this level of success coming. What are you hearing about how the Vikings are channeling this from Sam Darnold, getting him out to, like, I know it. I mean, I'm not saying the guy's going to win MVP, but this is an MVP frontrunner type of performance so far.
Yeah, let me tell you the difference of the Kevin O'Connells of the world, a lot of other coaches. Kevin is a teacher. There's not a lot of teachers left in this league. There's play callers, plenty of play callers, plenty of guys who call plays so they can get head coaching jobs, but they're not teachers. They don't develop. Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, they are teachers. They develop players. And that's why you see so many young guys break out. But there's so many coaches in the NFL who aren't teachers. They just call plays. It's totally different. If you had a young quarterback right now, you're definitely picking one of those four guys to say, man, I'd like for those guys to coach and develop him. And yeah, look what LaFleur did also with Malik Willis and Jordan Love, like the two of those guys, right? Baker Mayfield's had this resurgence with Tampa. I think it was the time he spent with Sean McVay. That little time that really changed things around for him a little bit. And Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy, last pick of the draft. But these guys develop these quarterbacks. They coach these guys in a different way. And even like Mike McCarthy with Dak Prescott, I remember just with him saying, we got to back to square one with this footwork. Start with this footwork. And obviously Dak has prospered under McCarthy way more than he did before him. And especially when Mike took it over from Kellen Moore, he just started working his footwork and he started developing him differently. And same thing, like Kevin O'Connell, man, he is any young quarterback. Think about this. Sam's doing great this year. Kevin O'Connell still has, if the Vikings are smart, they sign this cat to an extension ASAP. If I'm Kevin, I don't do it. I sit there, I wait my time. But Mike McDaniel got paid down in Miami because you get to say, wow, he has to develop J.J. McCarthy for the next decade. And that is, if I'm a Vikings fan and I'm a Vikings owner, I'm like, wow, this kid's going to turn into a stud because of how much of a teacher Kevin O'Connell is. Big difference between a teacher and a play caller.
Outside of the obvious two of Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan, I don't know who you would want more than the two guys in the NFC North, Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur, and the jobs that they're doing with their teams.
And McVay. I put McVay in there.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Quarterbacks, yeah.
Super Bowl winning coach definitely deserves mention. Speaking of McVay and the Rams, tough loss in Chicago, obviously. I was wondering if you had any updated information on any of those injuries in L.A., Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, anybody like that?
Look, they're going to get back some of their offensive line. It's funny. I was talking to Sean the other day about this. I said, look, right now, it's obviously hard because you're playing with so many back. And here's the thing. Cooper Kupp, right, has that high ankle sprain. And the only reason they didn't put him on, so people thought he was going to, he can come back this week because he's not on IR. Only reason Cooper's not on IR, you only get a certain amount of guys you could put on IR and then bring back during the season. They're coming with roster with less players than other teams, so they couldn't put him on IR. But he'll miss 2 more weeks. So yesterday and then next week, and then has a shot for the week after that. And then Puka's out for a good another month or so, something along those lines. I said, Sean, and his offensive linemen are so banged up. He's had secondary so banged up. I said, man, this league's about who gets hot and healthy late. That's what it's about. And you just got to kind of hang on here, but push these guys. And of these backups, a couple of them will rise up and suddenly be gangsters, right? So you got to kind of look at it as, hey, the cavalry's coming back, and we'll have a couple more pieces that we could use to step up when they do come back. At the same time, you're going to see guys who just don't deserve to be there, and you get to weed them out, and that's fine. But when the cavalry comes back, and you can find a couple other guys, start piecing in there. Look, last year they didn't know Puka was going to be this until week 1. In the middle of the first game, he's like, "Oh my God, this dude's a gangster," right? So when guys have an opportunity to show you could be a gangster, then he'll be able to use those guys and fortify when the cavalry comes back.
I keep trying to remind myself, like, it's fun to win in September. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
But as long as you're
relevant, look at the Eagles last year.
Yeah, well said. As long as you're relevant in the home stretch, there's no telling what can happen when you get some guys back from injury. Another update I wanted, and it looks like we're seeing it as we're talking. I saw Gerard Mayo saying that Jacoby Brissett is going to remain New England's starter. Is that what you're hearing? Should we expect to keep seeing Jacoby Brissett?
He said it. He's smart, because if you put Drake May in right now with that offensive line and just how that team's going, you may really stunt his growth. You don't want that. You really want Drake to sit there and learn and watch and see also how, Brissett deals with this. And it's the same thing in Carolina. They said, we're not done with Bryce Young. We want him to sit back and see how Andy Dalton handles all these other aspects of being a quarterback. Quarterback's not just about going out there, handing the ball off, throwing the ball. There's so many other things. There's so many other things between the ears. There's so many other things maturity-wise about how I handle teammates here, how I handle adversity here, how I handle these different conditions, how I handle the game clock with my coach. There's so many other things there. Drake should just sit and learn, because if he goes in there and just gets beat up so badly, you've seen too many other guys. It's happened to them and they never get over it.
Jacoby Brissett sacked 6 times by the 49ers yesterday. Yeah, I absolutely get it. One more quick thing I was wondering from you, if we could get an update on the status of Dallas tight end Rich Russo.
Oh man, Rich Russo, unfortunately, he is suspended forever for various infractions. He is no longer in. I know he's Gronk's favorite tight end. How great was that, man? That was, hey, we haze the rookies. What can I say?
For anybody that didn't catch it, Rich Russo is an imaginary 8-fingered player that the NFL on Fox guys
we created this fake,
set Gronk up with.
Yeah, we created this fake, and then I come on the air yesterday. Gronk actually just texted me. He just texted me, probably cursed me out. We came up last year, we had a fake segment, and we all knew it was fake. Everybody knew it was fake except for Gronk, and we were all in on it. And I also came up with some breaking news that Mike McCarthy just called me, that his Pro Bowl tight end, Rich Russo, was coming back. They were activating him. He lost 2 fingers. That's why he was on IR. And he's coming back for the first time. And well, Gronk, we really want you to break down what makes Rich Russo such a great tight end. And clearly Rich Russo doesn't exist. The truth is Rich Russo is the director on our A crew.
I was wondering where the name came from.
Yeah. He's our buddy. We worked with him forever. He's great. So we come up with this name. And the funny thing is Rich Russo, the real Rich Russo, is like, how does Gronk not know me? It was so funny. And man, yes, please go watch it on my Instagram. Watch it on mine. I have the full video on mine.
Give Jay the traffic.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Well, because you don't have it on yours. I don't know why I didn't do that.
I'll talk to somebody, damn it. I'll get to the bottom of this. How agonizing was the wait? Like, y'all recorded this some time ago. How excited were you to finally get this on TV?
No, it wasn't the wait. It was Bill Richards, our producer, comes to us in like the seminar last year and says, hey, we have 1 week where Gronk's going to be in place of Jimmy on the doubleheader. So he's going to think that there's an extra segment, because we have an extra segment on the single header days, the days we don't have America's Game of the Week. So like Bill started planning this in like July, and like we couldn't wait for this. And I think we did it in December. So like for 6 months, we just couldn't wait to get this one thing. And that day he let Kurt Menefee and I come up with the idea that we're going to play a joke. By the way, my first idea was not suitable for television whatsoever. And Bill,
is it suitable for a podcast? Can you share it here?
No. Bill and Kurt were like, "Are you out of your mind, Glazer?" I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, how long you all know me for 21 years? Clearly, I'm going to be great." They're like, "No, absolutely not. We're not doing this one. No, come up with something else." So we came up with the fake tight end, Pro Bowl tight end named Rich Russo. But his reaction was fantastic.
I thought it was a grade A bit of improv from Gronk. You could see the gears. Yeah. You could see the gears turning in his head.
At first, when he hears him, you see him like,
yeah,
that's right. And Michael's trying not to laugh. Oh my God, it was so funny. It was great, dude.
I'm so happy to know about Rich Russo, and eventually we'll have a glass of this wine, and you can tell me about your original idea.
No problem, buddy. You got it.
All right. I appreciate it as always, Jay. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks as always to Jay Glazer for hopping on the show. And thanks as usual to Fox Sports reporter Carmen Vitali for hopping on a Monday to help me talk about Monday Night Football. Another Monday Night Football doubleheader. And at least in one of these 2 games, Carmen, we finally got what we've been clamoring for. There's too much too high safety. There's not enough points. There's not enough passing in the NFL this year. Well,
tell that to Geno Smith.
Tell that to Geno Smith and Jared Goff. The Lions and the Seattle Seahawks play a good old-fashioned arena football game at Ford Field on Monday night. Lions get the better of Seattle 42-29. They snap a 3-year losing streak. I remembered the overtime game from last year.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the Lions have lost to the Seahawks every year of Dan Campbell's tenure until right now.
They've been quite a thorn. I thought it was me, honestly, because I was at that last game and I was like, ooh, am I a Lions bad luck charm? But
no bad luck charm in anywhere in sight on Monday night. Jared Goff, 18 of 18 for 292 yards. That's not even the best stat of all. Yeah. Can you see it on the lower third right there? A reception touchdown.
A receiving touchdown. I want to go back, though, to that 18 of 18 because he set the NFL record for the most passing attempts without an incompletion in a single game. There have been 4 other quarterbacks that have started games 18 of 18, but none of them finished perfect.
This really felt like almost a picture perfect version of what the Lions want to be. Like everything that they like to do, you saw. Like they got it going early with the 2 running backs. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs each had sensational nights. They each scored touchdowns. And once you get that going, everything else kind of
opens up.
Like play action was there. Goff hitting in-breaker after in-breaker. The middle of the field felt like it's like the Seahawks forgot it was
Jamison
there.
Williams on a pretty routine crossing route, and he just takes it for 70 yards into the end zone.
Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta are doing their volume thing. They're the guys. They led the team in receptions, 6 and 4. And then when you've got Jamison Williams, when he can finish with 2 catches for 80
yards.
It's all clicking, man. I will say this. And not to call them like frauds or anything, but the Seattle defense has been salty through the first 3 weeks of the season. Really nice performances against teams like a Tua-less Miami and the New England Patriots and the Bo Nix Broncos. Like I said, I'm not burying them, but this was a step up in competition and they weren't quite ready for that test. I know they had a lot of guys inactive in this game. I think Julian Love went out with an injury as well, but the amount of wide open space that the Detroit Lions were working with, I think this is another one of our favorite stats from this game. 299 passing yards on the night for the Detroit Lions. 200 and what was it?
219 of them were yards after the catch.
Yards of yak for the
Not
Detroit
only did
Lions.
Jared Goff only have to throw the ball 18 times, what was his yards per reception average was
16.2 yards per attempt.
Yes.
All completions. It's the second highest total of this season behind only Anthony Richardson.
Yet that wasn't really all Jared Goff.
No.
Not to take anything away. There was a phenomenal performance by Jared Goff, but it's incredible.
Like I said, this is just this is the ideal version of what the Lions can look like. You've got all these playmakers who can get into space. David Montgomery played Seattle. He might as well do his best beast mode impression. Just shook off Devin Witherspoon like a preschooler. Like,
that
get
was
off
after
me.
was that after headbutt? Was that Devin Witherspoon that he headbutted?
40-yard catch and run. Felt like he took half of the Seattle defense with him.
Yeah, for sure.
I would guess the Lions would love to clean up their own defense a little bit, because not to sell Seattle short. I mean, Seattle scored almost 30 points in this game. Losing effort, I thought Geno Smith was phenomenal on Monday night.
He had to be. I mean, he threw the ball.
It did take him 56 attempts to get to 395 yards.
56 times.
Okay, and that's totally fair. He did, it's a lot of attempts, but he was dialed in, man. Like, he was finding DK Metcalf. He was putting the ball in a thimble space. He similar throws to Jackson Smith and Jigba. Just so many perfectly placed passes. Seattle converted 5 of 10 third downs in this game. Mm-hmm. Scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions after halftime. Like, if they were any less efficient, they lose this game. I mean, they already lost by 13 points. They lose this game by 20 plus.
They were 3 of 4 in the red zone. Like,
they lose this game big if Geno Smith wasn't dialed up to a perfect 10. I thought he was so good. He wound up with a late interception. Kirby Joseph finally gets him in the end zone. Game was kind of over at that point anyway. I just want to make sure we highlight, I think he's been playing well all season long. To go on the road against an NFC contender and play as well as he did, I think I probably feel better about the Seahawks today. And I know maybe that sounds silly because their defense got torched, but if Geno Smith is playing like that,
they also had some injuries. Julian Love went out during the game. We also haven't mentioned, though, I think you need to mention Kenneth Walker. First time he's ever had 3 touchdowns in a game.
Incredible.
Rushing touchdowns in a game.
one of those Monday night performances that swings fantasy games all over the country. Like everybody,
like from personal experience.
Yeah, well, based on what we're hearing in our own studio here, yeah, it sounds like it was that type of night for Kenneth Walker.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, to your point, Byron Murphy didn't play in this game. Leonard Williams didn't play in this game. Boye Mafe and Uchenna Nwosu all inactive.
Yes,
it's a shorthanded defense.
That's why I think you can take a lot away from this game and be encouraged by it, because you think that once the Seattle defense gets a little bit healthier, you're going to be okay.
Like I said, I feel better about the Seahawks mainly because Gino really looks like that dude. Like, I don't want to speak too firmly off the top of my head, but I think he's on a very short list of quarterbacks playing their best football so far this season. Like, I would put him in the 5 best performing quarterbacks of this young season so far, probably. And yeah, you couple that with a defense that can get much healthier as the year goes along. I know they lost by 13, but yeah, like this is one of those losses where I'm like, okay, I think the Seahawks are for real as a playoff contender in the NFC for sure.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that we saw that though coming into this year, what they were able to do. Like they've been pesky. They've been just, like they've caused some problems for some teams, and they've caused this Lions team and specifically problems over the last few years. And this time the Lions shake it off a little bit.
They absolutely did. I mean, hey, they scored 40, not to take any credit away from them. Phenomenal night for Detroit. They go into their bye week at a pretty 3-1. They get Dallas on the other side of that. Early bye week, but a good spot to be in if you are the Detroit Lions. That was the late Monday night game. Another Monday night game was played. That's what they tell me anyway. I will say
the Titans and the Dolphins played a football game.
A football game was played
in Miami.
The Titans scored 30 points for the first time in 1,002 days.
Yeah, since the 2021 season.
To be like, no offense to them, and I'm glad they did it.
But that was in 2021, so it was the 2020 season.
Mason Rudolph replaced Will Levis due to injury like early in this game. I don't have much else to say.
No, honestly, you saw the tail end of that game. It's 4th and goal. Tennessee takes the timeout with 30 seconds left, and like you're like, what are they doing? Why? What? You're gonna run up the score on these guys? And that's when I kind of did a little bit of digging. Shout out Buck Rising, national radio host, good friend of mine. I looked on his Twitter timeline because he was at the game, and that's when I solved the mystery of why in the world the Tennessee Titans would try and go for it with 30 seconds left, up multiple scores.
Yeah.
And it's because they were breaking a curse.
Well, good for them.
To get to 30 points in a game.
Good for them, I suppose. They do. Hey, they don't have a donut in the win column anymore. There's now just one winless team in the NFL. That's their division rivals, the Jags. Nice. And I'm sorry, Dolphins, you're just not a very watchable football team until you sort out your quarterback situation. We can check in with them later. Not much else to say about that other than good job for the Titans. So in lieu of that, let's jump into the next part of our show. You and I decided to take a deep dive on an NFC upstart. We'll talk about that next. All right, let's move past the results from week 4. We wanted to spend a segment on the Tuesday show, taking a look behind the curtain, take a deep dive on a team, and I couldn't come up with a more fitting one for the results we've seen through 1 month of the season and the guest we have, Carmen, still with us for this segment. What better time to take a look at one of the teams of the 2024 season, or at least that's how they were billed
in the offseason.
That's what we're going to get into, Carm, because we're going to take a deep look at the Chicago Bears, the first month of a very promising season that had sky high expectations, sky high excitement, and it's been bumpy, we'll say. It's been, but
who could have seen that coming?
And that is a phenomenal point, because our own Carmen Vitali, you did your best to preach patience.
I did.
And measurement and measured expectations.
Sure did.
Did anybody listen to you?
Absolutely not.
Not a single person.
Literally, judging from my mentions, not a single person.
Myself included, honestly. I mean, I picked the Bears
I had to keep talking you down.
I picked the Bears as a wild card team. Still in play, by the way.
For sure.
And that's actually what I wanted to say. Look, it's easy to say that I think I just said it's been bumpy. Yep. The Bears are 2-2.
Right.
They beat the LA Rams 24-18 on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Another home win.
Longest active home win streak in the league right now, by the way, Chicago Bears.
Amazing statistic right there. You could easily make the case, other than the fact that Caleb Williams hasn't come into the league and lit it on fire, the Bears are arguably right where they're supposed to be. They look like a team with a lot of growing pains. They look like a team with a young quarterback. They look like a team that's defense has taken another step in an impressive evolution.
Yes.
And they're sitting at 500. Like, it's only the weight of the Caleb Williams expectations that make you think that the Bears have been disappointing, because like in a vacuum, you look at it and you're like, yeah, this all tracks.
And there has been incremental improvement every single week, which I think is the most encouraging part of all of this. And what I need people, Bears fans, the national audience to take into account is no, Caleb Williams did not come into the league and set it on fire in the way that we've seen some rookie quarterbacks do this year, last year, all that other stuff. But he is getting better, and this is the more realistic pace of improvement that we should have been expecting from the Chicago Bears, where most of their offense is new.
Well, we're going to break this down. We're going to go offense, defense, special teams, what's good, what might not be good, what we think might come from it. So let's start with the offense, which bit by bit, piece by piece, does seem to be improving over the course of the season. Week 4 against the Rams, easily their best outing of the season so far. And obviously it's going to start with Caleb Williams, who on Sunday posted a success rate of 55.6%, sixth best number in the league, passer rating of 107, also sixth best in the league. And you can look at it as you go through the season, incremental improvement. He was bottom handful in the NFL in both of those metrics for the first 3 weeks of the season. Yes. Just abysmal stuff. And then over the last 2 weeks, they lose to the Colts in week 3. They beat the Rams in week 4. Passer rating of 81 and of 106.6 against LA. So it's rough. The worst thing that's going for the Chicago Bears right now is the guy drafted right after him, Jaden Daniels, is that's writing the history books. But that doesn't mean Caleb Williams has been awful. He certainly hasn't been as amazing as a lot of people hoped for right out of the gate. But like you just said, you are seeing that incremental improvement.
And I do think that context and situation all has to be taken into account here when you consider that, yes, does Caleb Williams on paper have less than Jaden Daniels does in Washington? And the answer to that is no. We looked at this team on paper.
Yeah, let's not rewrite that fact after the point. Yeah.
You look at the Chicago Bears team on paper, and I think that added to the expectations that this offense was going to hit the ground running. But Shane Waldron is a new coordinator, just like, I know that Cliff is new in Washington too. But I think what you're seeing is 2 different approaches by 2 different coordinators as to their young quarterback. Whereas Cliff has kind of eased Jaden Daniels into the league. He hasn't put too much pressure on him to make certain pre-snap decisions or giving him plays with multiple reads that, make him get through all of these progressions and kind of operate a complex offense right off the bat. We are now starting to see Jaden Daniels push the ball down the field, but that didn't come right away. I think we saw not a lot of passes over 10 to 15 yards for Jaden Daniels in the first couple of games of the season. Contrast that with what we've seen from Caleb Williams and the fact that I keep kind of coining it as a baptism by fire in Chicago, because right off the bat, Caleb Williams was responsible for every single pre-snap decision that this Bears offense was doing. He is changing plays at the lines. He is making protection calls. He is sliding his protection this way and that. He is having to recognize blitzes and things from NFL defenses that, quite frankly, he has never seen before. And that is something that, and on top of that, Shane Waldron is giving him a lot more of this playbook than I think I even anticipated him giving Caleb Williams, given the fact that there are so many plays that you see that Caleb has to get through a progression, has to get to a second or third read before it actually opens up. And that's something that's really hard for a rookie quarterback to do who doesn't have his timing down with his line, with his receivers, with his backs. They are betting in Chicago that Caleb Williams is going to go through all of these trials and come out the other side because that's how good of a quarterback he is.
I want to be clear. I don't say any of this to disparage Jayden Daniels. He's been incredible.
No, absolutely.
But I do think like there's a pretty marked difference when you go look at these teams in terms of what they're asking their quarterbacks to do. I mean, like, from the jump, Caleb Williams is averaging 8.4 air yards every time he throws the ball. That's the 6th highest number in the NFL. Just for comparison's sake, Jayden Daniels all the way down at 6 yards, 28th in the league.
Yep.
Jayden has only thrown 8 passes, 20 or more yards in the air this season. And that's not to say that he can't do it. Obviously, the touchdown throw to Terry McLaurin against Cincinnati was one of the throws of the season to this point.
Yes.
But Washington is picking their spots. Like,
exactly.
You go look at the dude's charts after these games, and you see a lot of throws around the line of scrimmage. People were joking in the first 2 weeks about the number of screens, receiver screens particularly, that Jayden was throwing. I look at it and maybe we laugh and say, oh, Cliff Kingsbury runs a college offense. I don't know that Shane Waldron needs to just adopt what they're doing, but maybe it's smart not to ask as much of Caleb Williams, because when he is airing the ball out this way, it hasn't always been pretty. We talked about it while we were prepping for this show. He hasn't quite gotten on the same page with his receivers on these long downfield throws. I mean, he had 2 misses outside the numbers against the Rams.
Yeah.
2 of the best, I would say the best 2 throws of his season, probably between the hash marks against the Rams, one to Cole Kmet,
one to DJ Moore,
and the touchdown to DJ Moore.
Yep.
But it hasn't always been there. I mean, my jaw dropped when I looked this up today. He's attempted more 20-plus yard throws than any quarterback in the NFL through the first 4 weeks. And I'm not talking about 20-yard gains. I'm talking about balls that go 20 or more yards in the air down the field. He's thrown 23 in 4 games. Contrast that with Jayden Daniels at just 8. And of course, when it's not working, it looks really ugly. He's only completed 3 of those throws on the season.
Right.
And he's gotten picked off 3 times trying it. Maybe, even with all the talent that he has, maybe we need to rein that in a little bit if we expect him to be more consistent.
Well, and I also think that part of that is Caleb having to rein himself in, because we can't know necessarily without being in those meeting rooms, but what it looks like is that these plays that Shane Waldron is calling that are part of this offense right now, a lot of them do include the long ball, the touchdown option, the flashy, let's get the ball, get the chunk yards, get the explosive play down the field. Telling a rookie quarterback, especially one like Caleb Williams, who was able to make those throws, make those plays happen in college so incredibly often, to instead check the ball down, instead take his first reads, instead, look for the first down in those cases. I think there's been a lot of frustration up until this point by Chicago fans in particular, saying, you have these 3rd and short situations. Why are you airing the ball out? You're not going to catch an NFL defense on its heels when you do stuff like that. They are ready for it. So telling Caleb Williams that, hey, this play does have a touchdown built into it, but don't take it. That's where you're starting to see him kind of come out the other side, but that's part of the learning curve.
Let's talk about the thing that unifies this entire conversation, which I think most people are willing to give Caleb Williams the grace of time, especially when you see growth over the course of...
Tell that to the Chicago fans that were booing him on the second drive this last game.
I said most.
That's a stadium.
But
booing.
Okay, is it all directed at Caleb? And that was going to be my next point, which is one of the hot button issues of this season for the Bears is their offensive line. 16 sacks allowed in the first month, is 30th in the league. They haven't, up until Sunday, been able to generate a ton of big plays in the run game. But we talked about this. You're not as down on the Bears offensive line as a lot of people are. Where do we stand on that? Can it improve? How much does it need to improve?
Yeah, I'm not going to go so far as to say this is one of the better lines in the league, because I don't believe that at all, especially when you have examples within the division to show that that's not the case. But I do think that with the scheme shift, with the system shift under Shane Waldron, there is a lot in this run scheme, in this just offensive line, this pass blocking and run blocking scheme that is different, and it requires a lot of trust. That is the biggest thing that I think we have not seen yet, and it's starting to develop. And you saw, again, the incremental improvement. It's so much harder to quantify offensive line stats. But we saw in this last game against the Rams, they went a lot more zone when it came to their run game. They were running zone quite a bit more, a little bit more man. That allows you to kind of stick to one, like when you're running a zone play as an offensive lineman, you are sticking to one side. You know which way you're shifting. You know which way you're sliding. You know which way it's the play is supposed to go. All you have to do is continue on the route that you started. Now, do some offensive linemen get a little bit of a wandering eye and they want to cut and they want to cut back because they see a guy coming into the spot that they just vacated? Sure. But you have to trust that the guy next to you has that player is accounted for, that defender is accounted for by the guy next to you. And I think that's what you're seeing in these guys. They've shuffled around a little bit. There's been some injuries. There's been some shuffling just in general. I think you're seeing these guys start to have to trust each other and knowing that they can, especially in this last game against the Rams. I also saw them use Cole Kmet in a lot of really good ways when it comes to that zone run scheme. You have Cole Kmet then when the rest of the line is going one way, you have Cole coming around the backside, making those kind of cut blocks, making sure that, you know, you're protecting the running back, the quarterback, all of that kind of stuff. You're using your tight ends in the way that we've seen Shane Waldron do it, not only in the pass game, but also then in run blocking, in pass blocking in general, being extensions of the offensive line. That you saw more help there. And there was no better example of this and of Shane Waldron not getting cute, the line not getting cute, the line doing what they're told. That first rushing touchdown where
Roschon Johnson
comes in. That's another thing we can get to is the personnel usage in the backfield. But Roschon Johnson, the Bears brought out 23 personnel for that touchdown. They're at the goal line. They just need a yard to get into the end zone, a couple yards maybe. They brought out 2 running backs, one of which was actually an offensive lineman, and 3 tight ends. You had 2 on one side. You had Mercedes Lewis and you had Cole Kmet on the right side of the formation. You had Gerald Everett on the left side. That just created a wall that Roschon Johnson was able to get through. And you had the lead blocker and you just didn't get cute. And it worked. You got into the end zone. You broke that plane. And that's what you want to keep seeing from Shane Waldron, from this offensive line, from this run game in general, from this pass game in general.
So maybe, and I think this gets lost so much unless you're one of the truly top tier offenses in the NFL, is the first month of the season in a lot of ways is just about figuring out what personnel works in which situations. This is our short yardage guy. We run the best out of this personnel grouping. When we were talking about this before the show, it's funny, like when you look into this, it's funny what you learn, because I was like, man, Shane Waldron's supposed to be this big 12 personnel guy. He wants to run with multiple tight ends on the field, but they keep asking their receivers to block.
Yeah.
Turns out they're pretty good at it, and maybe it's just a matter of time on task.
Yeah, that was the interesting part, looking up kind of their splits as to how much they still run 11 personnel a majority of the time. Most every team does outside of Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. And then on top of that, you have, out of 11 personnel, these guys have run, according to the information I looked up, came from PFF. 11 of their 28 rushes in week 4 came out of 11. 85 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 5 first down. That gives them an 8 ranking. They rank 8th in EPA per play on rushes out of 11 personnel because of that. So that is working. It's bad news for guys like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Roma Dunze, given the fact that they are having to block then. They're having to run block most specifically, which is obviously not the utilization that they are technically on the field for. But it's effective in that Shane Waldron is not afraid to run it out of some personnel sets that the defense isn't expecting. Because what happens when you trot out 11 personnel onto the field from a defensive perspective? You're in your nickel then, because you want more guys out in the second and third levels of the defense, accounting for those extra receivers on the field. That means you got a light box. you can run into a light box a lot easier than you can run into a loaded one. So it's kind of this chess match of Shane Waldron trying to figure out which of his personnel do what well, and then how often he's going to deploy certain personnel groupings based off of that and what the defense is doing against them.
Yeah, I think this is a case of like you've got to eat your vegetables, like it's the best situation on paper for a number 1 overall pick. And I don't back down from that. That was true. It still is true, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're trying to get a rookie quarterback acclimated to the NFL, what does it need to look like? And obviously Washington's had an incredibly efficient offense. I mean, the way that they're converting and moving the ball and scoring points is incredible with any quarterback, let alone a rookie. But again, utilizing screens, like quick release plays, like getting the ball out of your quarterback's hands. I don't know that it's a coincidence that the Bears had their best day on offense in a game where they finally found a way to get DeAndre Swift involved as a receiver. I mean, I know he had the big explosive run, but 7 receptions
on 7 targets.
It's more than all of his catches in the first 3 games combined. Like having an easy outlet, a guy you obviously screen passes, but also just check downs, getting the ball out of Caleb's hands and letting a dynamic athlete like Swift do something with it might be the type of stuff you need to do with a rookie quarterback instead of what I was imagining in August of Caleb pure drop back 25 times a game and just sailing the thing around the yard to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Maybe that was never realistic.
I think this all marries up when we talked about the offensive line running a little bit more zone. You talk about getting DeAndre Swift out into space, using him as a receiver a little bit in those check down options. You saw that opens up things like play action. You saw the screen game, all that kind of stuff. That all marries together. That all works together. And when each part of the offense is doing their job, that's what you see. You see Caleb Williams provided with these other options, and you see overall the splits are so much better. I mean, they had 28 rushes in this game, 23 pass attempts by Caleb Williams. You are now kind of keeping a defense on its heels because you are utilizing DeAndre Swift. It doesn't matter that you're not running him up the gut. Teams are still going to have to respect DeAndre Swift in the backfield, whether or not he goes out into a route or whether he's carrying the rock from a handoff. And then that, again, opens up stuff like play action. And it just gets your receivers, your running backs out into space where they need to be, especially when it's a guy like DeAndre Swift. And then Roschon Johnson is then your changeup back. He's the guy that you can run up the gut. He's the guy that's going to find those holes. He's got great vision. He's a bowling ball of a running back. And he's the one that can fight for those in those short yardage situations right up the gut. But now you have diversity in your backfield. You have diversity in your run game. You have diversity in your offense.
So with all of that said, and I feel I wasn't panicking about the Bears, but having looked closely into it, gone back and rewatched some things, I'm not overly worried about the Bears, given that they seem to be trending in the right direction. But for the first month of a highly anticipated season, what grade are you giving this?
For the first month, I was gonna say I gave them
It's like a progress report. You remember from high school or whatever, elementary school?
I know. I think I initially gave them a B-, but that was based off this last game. I think overall I'm giving them a C.
I think that's fair. I mean, Sunday against LA was downright encouraging based on what we've seen.
The only thing that the reason I docked them for week 4 and the B-, and I said a B- instead of just a B, is because of the penalties, especially the pre-snap penalties. There were so many. At half, the Bears had committed 7 penalties for 50 penalty yards. That's inexcusable, especially when so many of them are coming pre-snap. You have to get that out. And that's why I docked them a little bit. But for, overall on the season up until this point, I'm giving this Bears offense a C, and I think that's fair. And I think that's all we should have expected, especially when you've got a defense that's killing it.
Speaking of the defense, let's turn to them. And I don't think we're going to need as much time to parse through it all because Bears defense is kicking ass.
Kicking ass and taking names.
Say what you will about Matt Eberflus's relationship to the offense and the quarterback, but he was hired to fix the Bears defense, and it seems to be working. First year on the job, dead last in scoring defense, up to 20th in 2023. And right now, through the first month of the season, they are a top 10 scoring defense. They've got 8 takeaways on the season.
They sure do.
All of the vision for what the Bears wanted to be on defense, it really all feels like it's come to fruition in 2024.
It's so interesting because I talked about how this defense was going to be a top 5 unit this year if they picked up where they left off last year at the back half of last season, right? They had 18 interceptions in the last 9 games. It was absolutely insane. This is why I also said, hey, we don't need to expect Caleb Williams to be Superman, and we don't need this offense to be crazy because they can lean on this defense. And so far, that's incredibly true. You mentioned the 8 takeaways that the Bears have this year. Well, they have 6 giveaways on offense. So they have a net differential, a turnover margin of +2.
It's not even that. Yeah, they're not even taking that good care of the football.
Which is a top 10 ranking in the league. And if you take care of the football more on offense, this defense is going to get some stuff done for you.
I mean, the defense has already, and we'll throw special teams in too, but week 1 against Tennessee,
they won that game single-handedly.
Defense dragged them over the finish line. Yeah, we'll give special teams.
We will.
We'll get to them.
We'll get them. That is, I cannot say enough about how much Matt Eberflus told us to trust the process. And a lot of us didn't listen. I was even the biggest concern I had about the Chicago Bears coming into this year was their interior defensive line, because the Bears did not go out and get a bona fide 3-tech veteran guy to come in and lead this group. You were worried about the guy on the opposite side of Montez Sweat. They brought in Darrell Taylor, but how much juice did he have left? Was he going to be enough that a defense was going to take attention away from Montez Sweat to pay attention to him? And what's happened is, yes, that's happened. Darrell Taylor has been extraordinarily productive for the Bears this year, instantaneously too. And the interior of this Bears defensive line, where we thought they were weakest, they are borderline strongest. It's
really impressive.
Gervon Dexter is a guy that, coming out of Florida, did not play the 3-tech position. The Bears drafted him on traits, drafted him on his size, his power, his ability, his speed, his get off, all of that, and said, you can play 3-tech in this system. We didn't see that last year. We are seeing it this year between him and Andrew Billings. These 2 guys, you have 8 quarterback pressures by Gervon Dexter, 9 quarterback pressures by Andrew Billings from that interior. That is amazing. That's fantastic. Through 4 games of the season, I cannot say enough about this defensive line rotation, how that's opening things up. You saw Montez Sweat get the strip sack this last game. It's all working because those interior guys are eating up the space. They're getting pressure up the middle, which you need to do because Matt Eberflus is not known for blitzing. He's very much known for he needs to get pressure. His system needs to get pressure with 4.
Would you like to know the numbers on that?
Of course.
The Bears are using a 4-man rush 71% of the time.
Yes, that is a calling card.
right around the top 10 in the NFL. I can tie this back to my own history, and I love it so much. Matt Eberflus spent 5 years in Dallas with none other than Rod Marinelli, who obviously had some amazing defenses in
Chicago, in fact.
For the Chicago Bears. You could argue in the mid-2000s, the definitive defense in the NFL
was the Marinelli defense.
Rod came from Tampa, and I used to watch the Cowboys try to make this formula work where you're generating pressure with 4, dropping and covering in the back. And it's a beautiful thing to see that Eberflus has put it all together. And that was the big question. You just highlighted it, but you got to get pressure from your 3 technique position. They're doing it. You need a linebacker who can thump and who can cover. Well, Tremaine Edmonds fills that gap for you.
TJ Edwards does really well, too. We saw him go in on some delayed blitzes against the Rams as well.
You got a couple of physical, sticky corners who can do a little bit of everything. Tyreek Stevenson and Jalen Johnson, just as good as a lot of us thought they would be. And then how about Jaquan Brisker?
Oh, yeah.
Sunday was just a chef's kiss game.
It was a little bit of a roller coaster for him at the beginning because he thought he had that interception of Matthew Stafford early on in the game. And then the ref called it an incomplete pass because Jaquan stepped out and came back in. It didn't quite work out, but then he got him back when he called game at the end of the fourth quarter.
Rod Marinelli must be giddy watching this because this is
student became the master.
It is the picture perfect example of how this defense is supposed to function, and you can go right on down the line. Like I just said, they use 71% of the time. How about this? According to ESPN. They're first in the league in team pass rush win rate. So their pass rushers are winning their matchups in total, not one guy specifically, but all 7 or 8 of them winning more than anybody in the league against their blockers. They're also second in run stop win rate. So they're doing it in the run game as well.
What happens when you've got a good interior defensive line, which we weren't sure about. 26 pressures from interior defensive linemen, by the way. That ranks 11th in the league. It's all working together so beautifully. And Matt Eberflus told us over and over again, I sat in press conferences where he talked about, we're confident in Gervon Dexter. Ryan Poles, same thing. We're confident in Gervon Dexter. We're confident in Andrew Billings. We're confident in Zach Pickens. All of those interior guys. We're confident in Montez Sweat. We really like Darrell Taylor. They told us to just wait and see. And nobody really wanted to. And now I'm here to say, sorry, guys, should have trusted you. You've given me no other reason not to trust you. It worked out.
We already knew this defense had a couple of stars and then a handful of promising guys. And it really feels like all of the promising guys have stepped into their own at the same time. It's very, very fun to watch. And lo and behold, go figure, the Chicago Bears are salty on defense. What else is new? Through a month, what grade would you give them?
A.
I don't... You
can't ask for anything more. I mean, there's maybe 2 defenses in this league that are better than them right now.
Even the game that went the most off kilter for the Bears this season, which would be Houston in week 2, Houston stopped moving the ball after halftime. I mean, the Bears defense gave them a shot to win that game. It's just that nothing was happening for the offense.
CJ Stroud was like 9 for 9 on 3rd and 4th down coming into that game. He was not 9 for 9 after.
It's been an incredibly impressive month. I agree with your grade, and I think this defense... I don't think Caleb's going to have to score more than 24-ish points in most of the games he plays this year. That is exactly where you want to be. If you can even steal some like you did against Tennessee, where your defense contributes to that total, hey, no telling.
When they're getting this many turnovers, some of them are bound to hit and go into the end zone too. There's bound to be more pick sixes just based on a law of averages. And the fact that they already have 8 takeaways through 4 games.
Big piece of this too. We hinted at it. Let's wrap it up with the hidden unit, and it shouldn't be in Chicago.
I mean, it's not. Everybody knows who Tory Taylor is.
The year we enshrined Devin Hester in the Hall of Fame, we are not going to ignore special teams.
Sure are not.
Let's start with Tory Taylor, because there were people who wondered if you should draft a punter in the 4th round.
I was one of them. I admittedly was one of them.
Do you feel differently 4 weeks into the season?
Now that I know it worked out on defense, probably. I do feel differently. But as a general rule, I think there are just like...
As a general rule, I think it's a bad idea. But when this dude is booming 60-plus yard punts multiple times a game, for anybody that didn't get a good look at Bears-Rams on Sunday, I'm just going to read this off to you. After Tory Taylor punts on Sunday, the Rams began 4 different drives at their own 5, their own 20, and then 2 more at their own 8. Wouldn't you know, 2 of those 4 possessions led to Bears takeaways, that one of them led to their first touchdown and the other one led to the game-sealing pick, because even Matthew Stafford's not as comfortable coming off of his own goal line as he would be further down the field. Tory Taylor... I think he got a game ball, if I saw correctly.
Yeah.
I hope he did, because he freaking deserved it. He was incredible.
To borrow a phrase from our very good friend Adam Amin, who called this game, we respect punters in this house.
When they do that, we do. When they have a net of 55 yards per punt, we do.
I have to shout out Adam, too, just because his calls on these punts were so good. If you weren't watching the game with sound... They're honestly worth going back and listening to, because Adam Amin was just so animated, colorful, gives so much good insight normally, but then to hear him get excited about punters, it's another level. But it does matter, and we're seeing how much special teams in general, between the new kickoff rules and now this new breed of punter that the Bears seem to have unearthed. Special teams matters. And again, in that week 1 game as well, you talk about how much the defense won you that game.
Punt block for a touchdown.
Punt block for a touchdown. Special teams came in clutch in that game as well. And when you can force your opponent to have to go 12, 13, 14, 15 plays down the field, because they're starting within their own 5, you're gonna win those games more often than you're not.
Torrey Taylor looking like a superstar, and no, that's not an exaggeration. Cairo Santos also doing the thing.
So solid.
I think solid's the perfect world, because now we live in a world.
Flashy,
we live in a world now where Brandon Aubrey's booming kicks from 66 yards away, 63 yards away.
We're gonna see a 70-yard kick within the next couple seasons.
It kind of feels that way. But Cairo Santos, 7 of 8 on the year, 4 of 5 from 50 plus. And when your only miss of the years from 56, Cairo Santos is doing A-okay. So I'm going to step out on a limb and say an A for the special teams as well.
Yes, because we respect punters in this house.
So let me see if I've got this right. The Chicago Bears have a middling offense, but elite defense and special teams.
Where have you heard that before?
The more things change, the more I think they stay the same. Although I will say, having looked at all of this, and I don't know if the breakout is coming soon, but I really do feel good about Caleb Williams. If you average it out, Caleb's on pace for about 13 touchdowns, and I think the rookie record is 11. So like, we're still in good shape with Caleb. Admittedly, a slow start, but I also
have to think that he may be on pace for 13, but you see the improvement on offense. And if it continues to improve, then that average is going to go up.
I will be surprised if it's not always going to be amazing, but I'll be surprised if the offense doesn't continue to tick in the right direction. I think the Bears will be just fine. Carm, thanks for helping me look into it.
Of course.
Just about does it for the show. But before we can move on to week 5, we wrap up week 4 as we always do. It's time for the power rankings. It's time to sort out the hierarchy of the NFL. Please direct all your complaints to me on Twitter or the YouTube channel if you want to. You can find us there. Let me know where I screwed it up. You don't have to if you don't want to. But you know, management will see all complaints on social. Feel free. Without further ado, let's get into it. How the NFL shapes up after week 4, according to me. If I can see my handy dandy graphic. Let's start down at the bottom. AFC East representing well. Pats in last place. I've got the Miami Dolphins. They're all the way down at 31, which really, it doesn't feel fair to me. And it's not their fault. Their quarterback is hurt. But have you watched the Dolphins since Tua Tagovailoa went down? It's brutal, man. We talked about it. Like Monday night against Tennessee, I feel confident saying already it's one of the worst NFL games that'll happen this season. Just not a very functional team without a high-level quarterback. On the bright side for Dolphins fans, we can put to rest the notion that Tua is some kind of system quarterback or he's purely buoyed by Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Like, sure, having those receivers makes him better, but not just anybody can step in and succeed, clearly, because this is one of the ugliest teams in the league without their quarterback. Dolphins having a rough season. Let's go elsewhere in that division. Way up at 17, I gave a big drop to the New York Jets, all the way down to 17 from the top 10. And it's just kind of been one of those seasons. Ugly showing in San Francisco. They bounce back with a win. Then they get a very impressive win against New England. 10-9 at home to the Denver Broncos. Maybe when Zach Wilson is at MetLife Stadium, the Jets just can't play good football. I don't know. I know the weather was bad. I don't care. They looked awful on offense. The Jets pass rush, clearly looking like a team that could use Hassan Reddick. Maybe time to figure that whole situation out. Just one of the more brutal showings of week 4. I gave them a big drop. I'm not writing them off, but you got to fall a little bit after a performance like that. Let's keep it pushing. Up at number 14, I have the Atlanta Falcons jumping 5 spots from last week. They beat the New Orleans Saints at the buzzer. And I bet Falcons fans are going to be mad at me because I do have them below the Saints. And I'll just point this out. They got the win. Kudos to them. They're firmly in 14th. I bumped them up big. They're technically a playoff team if you want to look at it that way. I like the Falcons. They still managed to sneak a win without an offensive touchdown. Defensive pick six and a punt return or a punt muff touchdown, muffed punt recovery. Those are doing the heavy lifting for this team. I don't think it's great that you get a win with Kirk Cousins in the offense not finding the end zone. So I like the Falcons. They did beat the Saints, but I still think the Saints' overall body of work is slightly better through 4 games. But big picture wise, I'm very excited about how the NFC South is shaping up. I think all 3 of those teams are going to be in the mix. And I think all 3 of them look a lot better than last year, because last year was a close race between mid teams. I think all 3 of these teams could be legitimately pretty decent. So that's how I feel about the Atlanta Falcons. Let's jump up a newcomer to the top 10. I gave the Commanders a huge bump. And look, it's not that beating Arizona is some crazy statement win, but beating the brakes off Arizona on the road on a short week after your coming out party against Cincinnati, I think the Commanders have on the field, forget the rosters, forget all that stuff, but just based on what they've done, the Commanders have the best overall body of work of anybody in the NFC East to this point in the season. I think that's true. Even their loss was to a really good Tampa Bay team. So yeah, I'm feeling good about the Commanders. The offense is doing incredible stuff, like the efficiency, Jaden Daniels' dual threat ability, the accuracy. We've talked about it plenty. I'm sure a dip of some sort is coming, but I'm recognizing the fact that the Commanders have had the best overall month in that entire division. I put them just ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles, who are down in 10th place. Yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Washington Commanders. It's fun to get excited about unexpected teams. Speaking of which, let's wrap it up. Trying my best to make amends with Minnesota Vikings fans. I've got them up in the 4 spot. They're up 7 spots. I don't feel bad about slow playing the Vikings. Like, it all hinges on just how good Sam Darnold can be. And he has been incredible through the first month. He did it again on Sunday against Green Bay. 3 passing touchdowns, multiple touchdowns in every game this season. He's limited the mistakes, though. He has shown signs of being a bit of a reckless quarterback at times, but he's reined it in for the most part. As long as that keeps going, you've got to love the defense. You've got to love the skill talent on offense. I think the Vikings are for real. I still think it's fair to ask them to continue showing up. Like, the teams above them, we've got a little more stock. Like, for instance, kill me if you want to, I have the Ravens above the Vikings because there's a lot there that I can trust between the continuity on the coaching staff, the multiple-time MVP quarterback. That stuff matters to me. But the Vikings absolutely deserve to be in the conversation among the best teams in the NFL, and they keep proving it week after week, going up to Lambeau Field to beat Green Bay. Niners and Texans, those wins speak for themselves. You do that in a row, it's hard to look at their schedule and see a game that you don't think they can win. I'd go as far as to say there aren't any more. If you can beat San Francisco, Houston, Green Bay back to back to back, you can hang with Detroit. You can hang with the Seattle Seahawks, the Green Bay Packers when they do get that return game. It's shaping up really nicely for the Minnesota Vikings. So I hope that's good enough. I think 4 is a perfectly fair ranking for the Vikings. And then you've got the Ravens, Lions, and Chiefs at the top. What else is new? The perennial powers. That does it for the power rankings. That does it for the show. We will be back in your feed on Thursday. It is already time to get ready for week 5. So much more coming your way. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Go find us on social at NFL on Fox Pod. We've got you covered all season long, leading all the way up to Super Bowl 59. I appreciate it so much, and I will talk to you soon.